Our last speaker tonight, as we celebrate the magic of storytelling in person after 2 years of virtual events. I just love feeling the energy in the room. I hope we can all take a moment to bask in that. And our last storyteller is Emily Elting, another friend who I've had the wonderful fortune to know for a decade and a half. Emily, who lives right here in Portland, is a mother, a singer, a mathematician, and her daughter Louise was born on a very auspicious and unusual day. I will let Emily take it from here. Let's give her a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Brooke. When my husband and I found out that our baby was due to be born in mid-February of 2020, my intuition told me immediately that we were going to have a leap day baby. I just knew. My due date came and went, and it was Friday evening on February the 28th, and I remember I was just tired. It was the end of the week, and Friday nights are tough. And I was, relaxing, actually watching Fantasia, and starting to have more contractions, cramping, back pain, and I was like, oh, okay. And I got up and I walked into the kitchen toward Will, and I just used the bathroom, and I felt this wet, gloopy blob fall out of my vagina onto the dining room floor. And that was the mucus plug, and I knew I was in labor. We had a very long night ahead of us, and my logical brain started saying, this is just bad timing, and how am I gonna sleep? Can I sleep? I did not sleep. We went to the hospital twice. As many first-time parents, we were rejected the first time around, and we were finally admitted in the wee hours of leap day, and labor was fully underway, and I was then starting to do some math in my brain, and I was thinking, okay, I am 4 centimeters dilated. It's been 12 hours. How much longer am I supposed to do this? And I'd always known that I would just know when it was time to get an epidural, and I didn't have a super firm birth plan, but I just knew it was time, and I did, and it was awesome. I felt a huge amount of relief, and honestly, that day was really calm and restful. We both slept, which was awesome. And we really started getting ready to become parents. And the sun set again the evening of Leap Day 2020, and the doctors and nurses started explaining to me what pushing would be like after you've had an epidural. And it's kind of a magical thing, because you can't really feel your body, and you're supposed to push. What does that actually mean? But I was always really excited for pushing. I don't know why, but that was always the part of birth that I was really excited for. And I was like, I can do that. And when they said it was time, I tried to push for the first time, and I just saw all of these faces light up. Will and the nurse and the doctor, they're just like, yes, do that. Yeah, that's it. And I was like, oh, yes, I can do this. I pushed 10 times, and all of a sudden, they're passing this slimy body up onto me, and she just feels like all arms and legs, and it's my daughter Louise, and Will and I are just looking at each other and just sort of gasping and speechless and blubbering, and it's just in this moment that lasts forever. It really lasted about probably less than a minute, and I could barely notice that there was this nurse on my other side, and she was looking at the baby and inspecting her, and she starts saying, she's just not breathing as well as we would like. I'm gonna take her over to the table. Come on over, Dad. I said, sure. I felt great. I felt euphoric. And I also had a lot to distract me still. I had to birth a placenta. There was a really beautiful moment where I swear to you, the doctor had her entire arm inside of my body, just scooping out pieces of whatever was left over. I then proceeded to overhear very clearly a conversation between 3 doctors talking about my vulva and perineum. They were asking questions to each other like, do you think this goes all the way through? And where does this piece go? So for the uninitiated, I had 3A tearing, which basically means it's not great, but not the stuff of nightmares. So I was getting stitched up, and all during this, Will and Louise are over on the little table, and things were happening, and they say, we're bringing her to the NICU, we just need better equipment. I'm like, sure, great. I think a lot of my serenity came from just my own birth narrative. So I'd always known from my mother, she said, you were 10 days late, just like Louise. You were 9 pounds, 5 ounces. She was 8'13", so not quite as big. And you sucked down some fluid and were taken to the NICU. That's all I knew. And that was my birth narrative. So when kind of the same thing was happening with Louise, seemingly, I expected it. It felt normal. It felt normal. So meanwhile, another nurse is coming over, and she's got this tiny plastic spoon, just like a regular plastic spoon and baggie, and she's sort of scooping at my nipples, trying to get the colostrum so that they can bring that to Louise. And again, my logical brain starts kind of kicking in and saying, how are those tiny little drops going to turn into something that feeds a human life? What? It was just impossible to imagine at that point. Will and Louise have at this point been in the NICU for a while, and while I'm having this euphoric experience, Will is in hell. He has seen them take her away, try to suck all this messy fluid out of her nose and mouth, and hear their conversations where they're concerned. It's not good. And they whisk them both away to the NICU, and there it just gets really scary. There's the machines and the IVs and the tubes and monitors and alarms, and she's upset and he can't comfort her and he doesn't know what's going on, and it was just awful. And so by the time I was able to meet back up with them, I see Louise in this plastic bubble, intubated, covered in wires, hooked up to the machines. I see Will's face, and my anxiety just broke through the euphoria, and I was just exhausted and terrified. Fortunately, very quickly, our logical brains were able to comprehend that she was going to be okay. This happens. Pneumonia, they said, some sort of pneumonia. And they said, we're going to put her on a couple of antibiotics. She's going to be here for a week. We think she's going to be okay. So then we were just stuck with becoming parents, just NICU style. So it was, of course, all about pumping. We started my breast milk coming in with the special pump that mimics a newborn. And we started just obsessing over quantities, tiny little syringes with 1 milliliter, 2 milliliters. And meanwhile, Louise is getting 20 milliliter feeds from her tubes. And I'm tasked with, you have 1 week to get up to speed, start breastfeeding, and be able to leave together. And it just felt impossible. Fortunately, we were able to sleep. We had grandparents visiting. We were able to figure a lot of this stuff out. And so many things were kind of going up and up and up. She was getting better. She was getting stronger, bigger, and feeling well. Meanwhile, there was a lot going downhill. For the last few nights we were there, we slept in this tiny twin-size cot bed, the two of us. And the only way that we could figure out how to fit in was head to feet, head at one side, feet at the other. It was like Vermont and New Hampshire, if you can understand. And it was very uncomfortable. Every time we wanted to pick up Louise, it was just this mess of wires, and you're navigating the wires, you're trying to pick her up and get her over here, and then you snag a wire, and an alarm goes off, and it's screaming at you. And every time an alarm would go off, my husband was just being dragged into these memories of his father being in the ICU, hooked up to the machines, and dying several years earlier. So he's just in this re-traumatizing experience that I just couldn't even understand. Meanwhile, I can barely walk. My vagina was a mess. I think I actually texted Brooke when I had my first bowel movement, and it was the most painful and scary thing of this entire experience. When you have a very torn perineum, yeah, it's rough. Going to the bathroom when you have a child in the NICU is a lot of work. You have to grab all the stuff, and there's a lot of stuff, the disposable underwear, the witch hazel, the ice pad, all the things. Bring it with you, wash your hands and hand sanitize like 6 times. You find a bathroom, maybe you can shower. I think I showered twice. And, personal hygiene is really, really tough to focus on yourself when you're parenting in the NICU. So about halfway through the week, I'm burning, itching, hurting, and we discover that my stitches are infected and I have to go on antibiotics. But by this point, at least the end was in sight. We had a goal. We knew that we needed to get breastfeeding going and we needed to be feeding her and it needed to work. And magically, after 3 whole days of not breastfeeding at all, we were able to get on track. Louise and I still to this day, it amazes me. So we planned our great escape. We grabbed everything that wasn't nailed down. We took so much disposable underwear and we emerged into a world that was really different than the world that we'd left. And I think that's true of every parent when you leave the hospital. But in our case, there were people wearing medical masks at the pharmacy. We're like, what are they doing? And when we left, the novel coronavirus was just something that we'd heard about on the news. No one was talking about it at the hospital the first week of March of 2020. We came home and we'd had this army of nurses and doctors who were parenting alongside of us for the first week. And then suddenly it was just us 3. And it was just us 3 for the next several months. And honestly, we felt lucky, we felt relieved, we felt good to be just the 3 of us. And we knew that we would listen to our logical brains, but mainly trust our intuition and just learn how to parent our very special weekday baby.